The first laugh came from behind the champagne bar, then another. Within seconds, dozens of attorneys were staring at me as if I had wandered into the wrong ballroom. I looked toward my wife, Elise, expecting her to stop whatever joke had started. Instead, she lowered her wineglass and smiled. It wasn't the warm smile I had fallen in love with 12 years earlier. It was the polite, uncomfortable smile people gave when they didn't want to defend the person standing beside them. My chest tightened. Tonight was supposed to be the grand opening of Elise's law firm, the achievement she had spent more than a decade chasing. I had supported every late night, every failed case, every sacrifice. I had believed this night belonged to both of us in some small way. Yet somehow, surrounded by strangers, I had become the evening's entertainment. A young associate stepped onto the stage holding a microphone and struggling to suppress his laughter. "Ladies and gentlemen," he announced, "I'd like to thank the man who made tonight possible." A spotlight suddenly landed on me. Confused applause filled the ballroom. Before I could react, the giant screen behind the stage displayed an old photograph of me wearing stained overalls while repairing our garage years earlier. Another picture appeared, then another. Me painting walls, mowing the lawn, fixing broken pipes, carrying lumber through the rain. Someone near the front whispered loudly, "So that's the famous handyman husband." The ballroom erupted. I turned toward Elise, hoping she would stop the presentation. She didn't move. She stood beside her senior partners, avoiding my eyes completely. Then the next slide appeared. The laughter vanished, so quickly that I could hear the projector humming. It wasn't another embarrassing photograph. It was a scanned copy of the original business registration for Bennett and Cross Legal Group. At the bottom, beneath the section labelled Initial Capital Contribution, one name appeared in bold letters: mine. Beside it was the amount that had funded nearly 80% of the firm's startup costs. The young associate froze. A nervous murmur spread across the ballroom as guests leaned forward to read the document. Several senior partners exchanged uneasy glances before turning towards Elise. She looked stunned. Then someone in the front row quietly asked a question that changed everything. "Wait, he financed this entire firm?" Before anyone could answer, I stood and calmly walked toward the stage. The associate immediately stepped aside and handed me the microphone. I accepted it without hesitation. No anger, no raised voice, just silence. I looked around the ballroom, meeting the eyes of the people who had laughed only moments earlier. "Those pictures are real," I said. I did renovate our garage. I painted walls, repaired pipes, and spent countless weekends covered in dust. No one moved. "What no one here was told," I continued, "is that I sold the construction company my father left me to help my wife chase her dream of opening this firm." A few people exchanged uncomfortable glances. Every photograph on that screen was taken while I was renovating the building that now carries her name on the front door. The silence became heavier. Then I reached into my jacket and removed a sealed envelope. I placed it gently on the podium. The entire room seemed to hold its breath. "I wasn't planning to speak tonight," I said. "I came here because my wife told me this was the happiest day of her professional life. I wanted to celebrate it with her." For the first time since walking onto the stage, I looked directly at Elise. She couldn't meet my eyes. "But after watching that presentation," I continued, "I think everyone deserves to know the complete story." I opened the envelope and removed a single document. It wasn't a speech. It was the original loan agreement I had signed 6 years earlier. Every payment had come from my personal savings after selling my father's company. I had never demanded to be listed as a partner. I had never asked for public credit. My only condition had been simple. Elise would build the career she had always dreamed about. The room was completely silent now. Even the waitstaff had stopped moving. One of the senior partners slowly stood from his table. "May I see that document?" I handed it to him. He read every page carefully before passing it to another partner. That partner's expression changed as he reached the final paragraph. The document moved from hand to hand. Finally, the senior partner faced the ballroom. "This agreement is authentic," he said quietly. "Without Mr. Bennett's financial support, this firm would never have opened." A ripple of disbelief passed through the crowd. Moments earlier, they had laughed at the man they believed was an embarrassment. Now they realised he had been the silent foundation beneath everything they were, celebrating. Elise stepped toward me, tears shining in her eyes. She reached for my hand. I took one respectful step backward. Not to humiliate her, simply because, for the first time in years, I had stopped pretending that public respect could exist without private loyalty. Elise finally took the microphone. "Everything he said is true," she admitted, her voice trembling. "Daniel never asked for recognition. In fact, he begged me not to tell anyone because he wanted my success to be mine." She lowered her eyes. "The presentation you just watched, I approved it this afternoon. I thought everyone would find it funny. I never imagined how cruel it would look." No one laughed. Several associates lowered their heads, ashamed of their own behaviour. Then the managing partner walked onto the stage and quietly removed the slideshow from the screen. He turned toward me. "Mr. Bennett, tonight we celebrated the wrong person. We honoured achievement while mocking the sacrifice that made it possible. Every one of us owes you an apology." The applause that followed wasn't loud. It was respectful. I thanked the audience, wished the firm genuine success, and stepped away from the microphone. Before leaving, I looked once more at Elise. "I never wanted your spotlight," I said calmly. "I only wanted your respect." Those words followed me long after I walked toward the exit. A week later, Elise came home carrying flowers and another apology. This time, there were no attorneys watching. No audience, no cameras. Just the two of us standing in the quiet living room we had once built together. She admitted that ambition had slowly replaced gratitude. She confessed that, somewhere along the way, she had begun treating my sacrifices as ordinary instead of recognizing what they had cost me. Then she asked if we could start over. I told her forgiveness was possible. But rebuilding trust would take far longer than rebuilding a law office. Respect isn't restored through speeches, tears, or public apologies. It returns through consistent actions over time. Months later, Bennett and Cross Legal Group was thriving. The firm attracted new clients, won major cases, and became everything Elise had once dreamed it would be. But people no longer remembered the opening party for its decorations, champagne, or impressive speeches. They remembered the husband who had been mocked for being a handyman. Then they discovered he had quietly built the foundation beneath everything they were celebrating. That became the story no one forgot. And for me, the lesson was even simpler. I had spent years believing love meant standing behind someone while they reached for the spotlight. But love should never require you to stand there while the person you support turns your sacrifice into a joke. I never needed applause. I never wanted credit. I only wanted the person beside me to remember that before the success, before the firm, and before the celebration, there had been two people building a life together. And if one person forgets who helped build the foundation, eventually, even the strongest structure begins to crack.